We've been talking about owning, possessing, controlling. And then we started talking about the dealer, whether that's the owner himself or the replacement for the owner, such as the guardian or the proxy, the authorized person. Now we're going to talk about the subject of the deal. So the author said, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him. The item or subject of the deal, of the sale, of the hiring or the rental. So remember, the sale, that's our default contract. That's our pre-selected type of deal, the sale. We want to compare other things to a sale. The sale has three basic elements, right? What are those three basic elements of a sale? Someone will tell me that in 10 seconds. What are the three basic elements of a sale? 10, 9, give me all of them at the same time. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Buyer, seller, and contract. No, you missed something. So I'll back you up. And subject. Okay. So the buyer and seller, that's one. That's the contractor. The subject, that's two, which is the item and the price. And then you have the actual contract, which is the statements. That's three. So a rental, for example, has what? It has a landlord and a tenant. That's one. That's the contractor. And it has a rent and a house. That's the subject. That's two. And then it has the statements. That's three. So now we're talking about the item, the subject of the deal. That's why we're trying to be general here. Not saying the subject of the sale per se. But everything goes around the sale. Everything is compared to a sale. So that's why the mentioning of the sale is prominent. It must have the item, the subject of the deal. It must have a lawful, religiously recognized, normally sought benefit agreeable to the function of the deal. Okay. So the benefit of that subject has to be lawful benefit. So what's the benefit of wine? Getting drunk off of it. So that's not a lawful benefit. What's the benefit of wind and string instruments? To be dazzled by their music, their sound. That's not a religious, that's not a lawful benefit. So it has to have a lawful, religiously recognized benefit, not any benefit. What's the benefit of a lion? Oh, you can, if you're a king, you can tie him to your throne so people will respect you. That's not a religiously recognized benefit. What's the benefit of a roach? Oh, well, maybe if you have a pet scorpion, you can feed it to your pet scorpion. That's not a religiously recognized benefit. So it has to have a lawful, religiously recognized, normally sought benefit. Normally sought benefit, like an apple. It does have a normally sought benefit, the apple. You can eat it. But it's not normally sought for sniffing it, is it? No. So then you can't rent it so that you can sniff it. You can't rent an apple to sniff it. Only for that purpose. And then give it back. That's not valid. So be mindful what you agree to. Because the kuffar, they do all that crazy stuff. Anything they can think of. Sometimes it blows your mind what kind of stuff they can think of to make money from it. So it must have a lawful, religiously recognized, normally sought benefit that's agreeable to the function of the deal. Yani, the benefit has to be agreeable to the function of the deal. Meaning, among the things that are very important in your dealings, in your Islamic dealings, which is all of your dealings, you are the Muslim doing the Islamic deals, and even if your customer or your client is a kafir, you work around that person with your religious knowledge and your superior dealings. You need to know what's the function of the contract. What do you want to achieve? Then what type of contract can you do to achieve that? In order to know what type of contract you can do to achieve that, you need to know the function, the point of that contract. What is it good for? What does that contract work for? So it has to be a benefit that's agreeable to the function of the deal, even if that benefit occurs later. Like a young donkey that cannot yet be ridden or loaded. Can you buy a young donkey that cannot yet be ridden or loaded? Yes, you can. Why? Because later you can ride on it. You don't have to use it now, but it does have a religiously recognized benefit that's agreeable to the function of the deal, even if that benefit will occur later. It doesn't exist now. Like you bought a little donkey, you can't ride it yet, you can't put loads on it yet, but you can still buy it because its benefit will come, inshallah. You can't eat it also, in case you didn't know, you cannot eat the domestic donkey. So you can't eat it. And if it's too young, you can't ride it. And you can't put loads on it. So what are you going to do with it? It's useless for you right now. It's just taking up space and you're spending money on it, feeding it. Maybe you like the way it sounds. Maybe you just like looking at it. But you can still buy it because its benefit will come. And even if one does not want the item for the benefit that legalized purchasing it, that means if something is legal, religiously lawful to buy it, then you can buy it, even if you don't want that thing for the reason that the religion made it permissible for you to buy it. Like the question came, a person wants a cat. The religion made it lawful for us to purchase cats. What are we going to do with it? You can't eat it. You can't train it hardly. Right? You can't make it work. So what are you going to do with it? Well, it catches mice. All right. Then the religion accepted this benefit. Well, what if you don't have any mice? Can you still buy a cat? Yes, you can. As long as it has a religiously recognized benefit, you can buy it, even if you're not buying it for the benefit that makes it permissible to buy it in the first place. Even if the benefit doesn't exist in it yet and the benefit shall come, you can still buy it. So, it must have a lawful, religiously recognized, normally sought benefit agreeable to the function of the deal, even if that benefit occurs later, like a young donkey that cannot be ridden or loaded, and even if one does not want the item for the benefit that legalized purchasing it. So, a consumable item, like a piece of bread or a candle, cannot be the subject of a deal that requires the item's permanence, like hiring and lending and endowing. So, for example, can you rent a candle? No, you cannot rent a candle, because that type of deal requires that the item remains, does not get consumed. But the candle is consumed. That's the way you use it. So the item itself is not agreeable to the function of the deal. You can rent a house because it stays. You can rent a horse because it stays. By using it. You can use it and it still doesn't go away when you use it. You cannot rent a candle because it does not stay. When you use it, it gets consumed. So the item is not agreeable to the function of the deal. Hiring requires an item's permanence. If you lend an item to a person for him to give it back to you, how's he going to give it back to you if it's a consumable item? How are you going to lend a person a candle for him to give it back to you when he gives it back to you, it's going to be used up? I'm not saying you can't let them use it. You can let them use it, but not with that deal, which is aria, that particular type of deal, a deal that requires the item's permanence. You can let somebody hold your book so he can give it back to you. You can let him hold your car so he can give it back to you. You cannot let him hold the candle so that he gives it back to you the way you gave it to him. You can't let him hold a loaf of bread so he can give it back to you the way you gave it to him. Those deals, those items do not agree with the function of those deals. An endowment. You leave an endowment, it has to be something that remains. Like you say, I dedicate this house as a masjid. Okay, the house doesn't go away by using it. I dedicate this land as a cemetery. So the land doesn't go away by using it. So it's valid. You can't say, I dedicate this candle for the masjid. It doesn't work because it goes away by using it. So it's not suitable for the function of the deal. So whenever you're learning dealings or whenever you're practicing any dealings, if you come across anything you're not sure how it goes, one of the things you need to know about is what is the function of that deal? What is that deal for? So the aria deal, the loaning, that's a deal that you use it to let somebody hold your thing, but he gives it back to you as you gave it to him. So if that's what you want, if that's your goal, then that's the type of deal you do. Not a different type. Say, I'll let you hold it, you give it back to me. And if that's not good enough for you, the one who's taking that, if that's not good enough for you, or even the one who's giving it, if you want money back, then you do a different type of deal. Say, I'll let you hold this, and you got to give it back to me, but I want you to pay me for that. Then you do a different type of deal, right? Then it's a hiring. So now you didn't just give it to him so that he can give it back to you as you gave it to him. Now you do want it back as you gave it, yes, but you want something in return. You want money, not just he give it back to you. He still has to give it back, and you want something else too. But now he gets something also, which is he now owns the right to that thing since he's going to pay you. He owns the right to it. So if that's what you want, you do a different deal. You say, the guy says to you, hey, let me hold your car. And you say to him, all right, you go hold it for a half hour, man. I want it back in a half hour. Safe and sound. That's it, period. So if that's not suitable for the one who wants to hold your car, you can do a different type of deal. You can say, all right, well, let me rent your car. I need to rent it. I need it for half a day. Half hour is not good enough for me. So a consumable item cannot be the subject of a deal that requires the item's permanence, like hiring and renting, and lending and endowing, meaning dedicating. Nor can one be hired to do work for an unlimited time when hiring is for obtaining temporary ownership. Religiously, a hiring and renting contract, they are the same. They are for temporary ownership. Not to the item, but to the right of the item. The right of the benefit of the item. That's the way that deal works in our religion. We don't care what the kuffar say. So then you cannot agree to indefinitely work, to indefinitely be hired. You cannot agree to indefinitely be hired because a hiring contract does not accommodate that. It's a deal that, it's a binding deal that just gets finished. Either you make a clear-cut deal with very clear conditions that each side is able to fulfill and complete and get it over with. Or you pardon the other person. You finish the deal or you pardon him. That's how you hire. You cannot quit and you cannot be fired religiously. You cannot quit and you cannot be fired. You cannot, I don't know what the word is. Abandon, like when you're renting a property. What is it called if you leave before you finish the contract? I don't know. And you can't evict also. You know something that's strange? Wallahi, I want to talk to any person who believes in the validity of striking. How I don't understand. How did the kuffar see that it's valid to strike? Kaif. Do you have a deal or you don't have a deal? If you have a deal, get to work and do whatever it was you agreed to. If you don't have a deal, then why are you going to work? If there's no contract, what are you doing? Explain to me, why would a person be, whether the person's a teacher or whatever, why would the person be working and he doesn't have a contract? How does that work? How does that happen? That's a true, honest question. I really don't know, how does somebody wind up working without a contract and then decide to strike because he doesn't have a contract? Maybe I'm missing something, but that seems pretty stupid to me. So help me out, please. So a consumable item cannot be the subject of a deal that requires the item's permanence, like hiring, lending, and endowing. Nor can one be hired to work for an unlimited time when hiring is for obtaining temporary ownership. If you want permanent ownership, you need to purchase. If you want temporary ownership, then you hire or rent. Also, an item cannot be temporarily sold because a sale grants permanent ownership. You cannot sell something for a limited time and then it goes back to whoever sold it. The one thing also I want to look into, this thing they call rent to buy. Rent to buy, what is that? How do you rent something to buy it? If you rent something, that means you put a contract for the benefit of that thing to a particular time religiously. Once that is over, it's done. So buying, if you want to buy it, then after you finish renting it, buy it. Or cancel your rental with the person. That means he has to pardon you like a debt. He has to pardon you. And you pardon him too. You both have to pardon each other. You're bound to each other. It's two ways. And then buy it. So how do you rent to buy? That doesn't click in my mind. Inshallah, I can look it up if anybody wants to help me out. Help me out with that one. You said, I think what they mean about the rent to own or rent to purchase is that the person gains the right to buy it if they choose so, meaning that another cannot come and buy. Oh, so they get first dibs basically. So he rents it, and then when it's done, he gets first dibs if he wants to buy it. Okay. Is there a way to say, I'll rent this to you with the condition that if you fulfill such and such, you get first dibs at buying it if you want? I know how that sounds to me, but I'm not allowed to guess. So, inshallah, we'll check. So, a consumable item cannot be the subject of a deal that requires the item's permanence, like hiring, lending, and endowing, or dedicating. I'll probably change that. Dedicating. Nor can one be hired to work for an unlimited time when hiring is for obtaining temporary ownership. Also, an item cannot be temporarily sold because a sale grants permanent ownership. It is valid to purchase a permanent benefit, like the right to have water routed to one's land, though this is rare. So here, this is also a very important case. When we talk about buying, what can you buy? You can buy one of three things. So take note of this. You can buy one of three things. Either you buy a specific item that you saw. One. Number two, or a very well described item with all the other conditions fulfilled. Or number three, a permanent benefit. A permanent benefit. Buying a permanent benefit. Like having water routed to your land. Let's say, for example, there's a creek or a stream that runs by your neighbor's land, doesn't run to your land. You could get water from that stream to your land if only you could dig a canal through your neighbor's land so that water can come to your land directly. So what are you buying? You're not buying the water. You're not buying your neighbor's land. So what is it that you're buying exactly here? You're buying a permanent benefit, or you're buying a right. You bought it. You purchased. That's the words of the deal. You purchased it. Remember, if you're doing dealings and contracts, you need to be mindful of the words you use. And brothers and sisters, don't let anyone try to convince you to be loose with your words. You already know that. You don't need me to tell you, but I'm telling you anyway. Maybe that benefits you. You might come across people who say, don't be so literal. Don't be so strict. Huh? It's okay. Calm down. No. Now, when you're dealing with dealings, you definitely need to be mindful of the words you're using. So someone in their claim wants to sell you some type of service. He's selling it to you. So that if you're agreeing to a sale, then it has to be permanent. Permanently yours, Yani. Permanently yours. What are you buying? Either you're buying a specific thing that you saw, or a described item with the other conditions of such a deal fulfilled. We'll talk about it. Or you're buying a permanent benefit, and that is rare. So most of the time when you're doing a sale, it's going to be for what? For something physical, some physical item that you're buying. If you want to buy a benefit, think twice. I'm not saying don't do it. Just think twice. For example, don't they say for insurance, I want to sell you insurance. Would you like to buy insurance from me? What are you talking about? How are you going to buy something that's not permanent? All right. So, it is valid to purchase a permanent benefit, like the right to have water routed to one's land, though this is rare. Its benefit must be religiously recognized, like being useful for hunting, eating, fighting, and load-bearing, like leopards and falcons for hunting, apes for guarding, elephants for working, riding, and fighting, bees for honey, cats for catching mice, and peacocks for their aesthetics. That means they look nice. They make you happy when you see them. You can buy them for that. The religion made that a valid benefit, a recognized benefit. The likes of lions and tigers lack negotiable usefulness. Negotiable usefulness. That means their benefit is not something that can be exchanged for payment. Whatever benefit a lion or a tiger might have is not something that can be exchanged for a payment. That's just another way to say they do not have a religiously recognized benefit. So they cannot be sold and are not owned by whoever has them. A zoo, they don't own those animals. Also, not permissible is vermin, roaches, flies, ants, snakes, mice, rats, except the beneficial type like the leech, because it's good for sucking the blood. That's a medicinal benefit. The silkworm, because it makes silk. And the beehive with its queen, because they make honey. Books of blasphemy are not beneficial. Books of blasphemy means books that their subject is blasphemy, not books whose subject is not blasphemy, yet they have blasphemy in them. You can sell a book that its subject is not blasphemy, though it has blasphemy in it, like a math book or a history book. And if you're afraid that they would believe the blasphemy in that book, then you warn them, but you can sell it. So books of blasphemy are not beneficial, as well as books of astrology, like fortune telling, reading palms, and all that stuff. So if somebody wants to sell you some tarot cards, don't buy that. What are you going to do with tarot cards? And philosophy, that's haram. Philosophy is invalid. Very, very harmful. Philosophy is very, very harmful. Nor are forbidden musical instruments. They do not have religiously recognized benefits. Also, it is not permissible to buy or sell 1 or 2 grains of wheat, because people do not usually seek that. 1 or 2 grains of wheat are not normally sought, so you cannot sell them. Nor burnt bread, because it is useless. What are you going to do with it? And if you're not sure it's useless, just go and try to eat some burnt bread and see how far you get. It was already stated that filth cannot be sold. And why? So we don't have to repeat that. One cannot hire a singer. That's not a religiously recognized benefit, and it's also a risky deal. So, how's this? Here's an example. Somebody, he sets up a little partition, like a wall or something. And he has a door there. And he stands outside the door, and people walk past on the sidewalk. And he says, "Come in, pay me a quarter, and see what entertainment I have for you in this door." You cannot pay for that. One cannot rent an apple to sniff it, we said that, or a slave girl for pleasure. He cannot hire a slave girl for pleasure. And her master cannot hire her out, rent her out for that purpose. A woman can be given in marriage for a dowry. Here, this last one, a woman can be given in marriage for a dowry, because a marriage is a type of deal, isn't it? So what's being exchanged? A woman is being married for a dowry. Any question? Question: when financing a car, is it permissible for a person to give a down payment and take the car and come back with the remainder of the money the next day? What does financing mean? Is he buying the car or is he renting the car? Okay, he's buying a car. I'm going to take the word financing out, but I want to come back to it. When buying a car, is it permissible for a person to give a down payment and take the car and come back with the remainder of the money the next day? Yes. Meaning, he buys the car and he just pays some of the money and he pays the rest later. That's valid. Now, I'm just curious, why is the word financing used here as opposed to just buying? So what do they mean specifically? What does financing mean to them? I really don't know what a lot of this stuff means to them. I know what's the religious judgments. And then when I go looking for words, like how to translate some of this stuff, I find out about all that stuff, the crazy stuff they do. You said financing, though, is supposed to be temporary until you fully pay. So financing, is that like when basically it's a conditional sale, if I'm understanding properly? That means that they're selling it to you, but if you don't finish paying in a certain way, they take it back. Even before we look at interest, let's just look at the base of it. So tell me, brothers and sisters, is that a valid sale? No, it's not a valid sale. So if someone says, I sell you this with the condition that you pay me like this, and if you don't, I take it back, and you don't get your money back either, I'm pretty sure that's part of the deal, isn't it? Well, of course it is. No, that's absolutely invalid. Yeah, so fear Allah and don't do something like that, brothers and sisters. Even if you have money, if you have enough money, it's a really nice car or really nice whatever it is, don't get involved in such deals. Just buy the car if you can. Or rent it. Or do some type of payment plan that's valid. But don't do something like that. So these are our religious rules. This is the way to deal Islamically. We consider these things as Muslims, even if they don't consider these things. Our religion give us knowledge. So we have knowledge. We practice that from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك